Apologies for the very, very scruffy beard, but I'm about to go to Vancouver and it's very cold out there, and I'm planning to cater for the warm environment, minus 30. We're just waiting for the deck, but what I'm here to talk about is actually a project we've been working on as ESL, which is actually government funded, which is really exciting. It's the first funding, it's not this one, is the first funded project by the government directly within esports, and it's all to explore new ways in which we can monetize, that's absolutely imperative to ensure there's a sustainability and there's a growth in the very exciting space esports is. Now obviously as ESL, we're one of the largest esports companies in the world. The UK office was founded in 2012. There's some ex-colleagues in the room, including Spike over there. And we really want to, here we go, we really want to find what is the next way in which we can really monetize our own IP, but as anything, this is a government project and it's an R&D project, and it's all for us to learn from. So, first of all, the facts. So we know it's massive. There's loads and loads of games out there. They're the top tier games, and there's a huge amount of viewership around the tournaments that are run. Obviously there's other engaging forms of content around those games, and then obviously there's hundreds of games more that will have additional viewership that's not on the screen. There's a lot of partners coming into the space, sponsors, brands, there's stars or investing in the space using their own personalities to increase the value proposition and their investments. Obviously there's the sports industry looking at the space, trying to find new ways of engaging with that millennial audience, and of course the broadcast media as well, who are always challenged around what's the future of their audience and how are they going to engage with that audience. And it's the right demographic, of course. It's millennial, it's Gen Z, it's a lot male, but that's changing slowly. They're all high spenders, they're all adapting online, and they're quite hard to reach outside of this gaming community. So the opportunity really is huge. And it's a growth market as well. Aggregate year on year, we're looking 5 to 15% across different areas. Extremely exciting space. I mean, this is largely reported by a few data companies, including Newzoo. But it's safe to say that the industry is not going anywhere. It's just a matter of finding out what that value return is. And these ecosystems are beginning to form. This is ESL's ecosystem. A lot of other industry partners, if you like, whether they're game developers or other tournament operators, have their own ecosystem. So all the way from grassroots to kind of the World Cups, there's a really solid, sustainable environment for the teams and all the other stakeholders involved. So everyone knows that they can potentially put more money into it. And Nielsen also have analysed this space, and they report a huge ROI. This is based on ESL One Cologne, but that's not our biggest event even. And that could be, it's exactly the same place for most IP within the gaming space and the content created around it. You know, if it's authentic, which largely it is, then the users are engaged heavily within that content. It's a service to the community, and invariably it's extremely successful. So, the big question, why are we struggling? Why is the topics of today about unlocking that monetization and finding out ways in which we can extract that value from the end user ultimately because of the value that's been provided to them? And obviously there's a lot of innovation in this space, and it's an exciting area, and that's, I guess, one of the most exciting areas of investment. So we sort of assessed what are those barriers. First of all, the stakeholders. we have this concept of the community owning the space. Everything we do is for the community. The community kind of vote with their feet. If they don't like something, they'll walk away from it. So it's really important to find that balance between what the IP proposition is, and as that IP builds out and it starts attracting a fan base, how it monetizes in return. There's also the third-party IPs, ESL being one of them. We're a tournament provider, but there's the teams as well. There's all the stakeholders who bring that viewership in. Maybe it's venues, maybe it's a celebrity. Whatever it is, that's a third-party IP at the table that is absolutely crucial to making this sustainable environment. And then it's about collaboration. I think, if we look 5-10 years past, the people who are involved in the esports industry, it was a bit of a knuckle fist fight, and we were always fighting over a bit of a slice of the business. But as it's grown, what we're starting to see is that the collaboration is where it's really building out. So whether that's franchise systems or deals with other types of deals with teams, but also with other tournament operators or IPs, obviously coming together and bringing a bigger proposition to the table. Ultimately, what we're looking for is that sustainability and that consistency, because if a stakeholder's coming in and putting money on the table, they need to know that the end goal is reached. There's also the understanding, sorry about the font there, we're finding that as the industry evolves, there's a lot of myths being created, misreported data or situations around false promises, and there's also the chances, obviously, we have a lot of companies in the space sort of putting their hand up and saying, yeah, we know esports, no worries, and we're finding there's a lot of burnt fingers in that manner. So a lot of advice we give to stakeholders coming into the space is, do your research, just make sure that this company really knows what they're talking about, and generally they will usually find the right direction to go. And access to data, I think one of the fundamental, and this has been touched on in the previous presentations, is that we need to do a lot more analysis around the audience and the performance of the content we create. But of course, there's a lot of partners that keep that very close to their chest. If we look at Twitch being one of the biggest ways in which we put our content out to an audience, well, they will only let a certain amount of data or give a certain amount of data back to this third-party IP owner, or even the primary IP being the game themselves. So that makes it very difficult then to try and figure out, well, how do we actually really sell this? So we need to engage with that consumer more directly. And then that can lead to a misguidance as well. Maybe we follow a route. When we tried to do ESL 1 Birmingham in the UK, it was commonly perceived that this would be an absolute disaster because Dota 2 in the UK just doesn't work. Well, it turned out to be one of the most successful ESL 1s in history. So who'd have thought? And then that founding interest. I think we see this with a lot of companies, especially sponsors, where they will say, yeah, we've got an esports strategy or we're investing in the space. But really, if you do the sums, they're probably investing about 0.1% of their time. The BBC is a good example where they're being challenged by Ofcom to reach a younger audience. Well, you'd have thought gaming would be priority number one, but in their mind, they're basically saying, well, we don't have time for esports, we don't understand it, we don't have a founding interest, and the few that do aren't in a senior position to push it forward. I think that's going to change over time as people get older and they get their senior positions. And listening to the community, of course. Risk and reward is really important. Long-term business models, extremely important because it's not all about the quick win. Esports is a buzzword. I think we suffer from that. And we need to have long-term faith in consumer revenue. And of course, the evolving media rights side of things. At the moment, that's being challenged. There's a status quo, this idea of a sport going out there, getting millions of pounds for their sport. Well, that's not going to happen in esports. How do we do it? We need to start thinking about the alternatives. And it does happen. That's the international. This year, last year, they reached $34.4 million in consumer revenue. That's crowdfunded, and 25% of that is that figure there. So just the faith in consumers coming to the table and saying, yes, we believe in this, and we're going to put our money down, it happens. So we really wanted to explore this, and something called the Audience of the Future came up as part of the industrial strategy, and we actually won the sports entertainment segment, aside to a lot of sports, very well-established sports, applying for £4 million of funding, so we're very proud of that. And this is the kind of timeline. We started developing out effectively a B2B framework, and we first demonstrated this in Birmingham last year, and then Hamburg again. And I've got a 4-minute video to really give you an idea of what we've been doing, and then we'll have another year of development. And just to reinforce, this is an R&D project, and it's all about exploring different ways. So collaboration is absolutely key in this project, and we implore anyone to speak to us about what we've learnt and how we can share those learnings in order to find the ultimate goal of monetization. So this video will just demonstrate what we've done so far.
Welcome to ESL One Hamburg, our second MVP of the year, and this is our first opportunity to take the product to the consumer. We've really scaled up the MVP this time in Hamburg. Our application has gone live to public for the first time in its second iteration. We've got the dashboard for the talent and the backstage production team, which is really giving them a lot more insights. We've also got the first demonstration of using a virtual studio with Dot 10, and of course we've got that all-important virtual reality experience which we have on demo on our booth.
So one of the challenges that we as content producers are facing is to make whatever happens on the display accessible to the audience. Dota is a highly complex game with multiple of heroes, different items, different combinations, so a lot of data gets generated. And with the backup of the data that's provided by Weaver, does not only help people who are new into the game to understand the basics, but only help the experts to dive deeper into the content and to the material of Dota 2.
We're soft launching the VR app and the mobile app today, really trying to make it so it's public ready, and it's just been launched into open beta. So in version 1 we had 3 different screens which players had to swipe between to get to the information. What we've done now is made it is one central location where they can get everything they want at the fingertips straight away. What the user can do in the VR application, not only have they got a personalised private experience where they can kind of drill into the map data, they've also got an area where they can go and experience the actual live stadium at the same time.
At this event, we've deployed 3 different VR cameras, 2 8K cameras, and a stereoscopic camera behind the players, which gives a really intimate viewpoint on stage. Our focus group back in the UK are watching the event live. We're capturing metrics in real time so we can analyse the way that they're watching and experience the event. And when we get back to the UK, we'll be following up directly with them to get some more qualitative feedback from their experiences.
So the challenge with video is obviously the high volume of data rates. We're going to high resolution data, stereoscopic, surround vision, all of those create huge data volumes that we've got to distribute out to possibly hundreds of thousands of users. We've been evaluating different CDNs from many of the cloud providers like Amazon and Google, and currently we've gone with Google. So we don't have to worry about data streaming to local servers. It takes the load off our back-end clients.
What we were doing is in terms of live feed was brilliant because you can see who's got the advantage, who's deploying the tactics, what strategies are going on, and before you know it, you're kind of hooked into the game and it gets you far closer to the actual action.
The Weaver app really gives you the context that you need to understand where you are in a Dota game, how it's going to play out from here on out. It gives you that extra bit of knowledge.
I really like the way that the app actually kind of translates the amount of data that is in Dota and kind of condensing it down and visualizing it in an easy to view way.
You've got basically a framework for how the game can look, and now you're looking at what's the next predictive part of this. Where is the game going to go in the next 20 minutes? You've got win probabilities, all of these unique things that take it to the next level.
we're now starting to really see that overall vision, the seamless experience that is across the app, across the professional tools for the caster, across the virtual studio, all infused with exciting data, creating an all-encompassing experience for the viewers.
The ambition for the virtual studio element is to be able to give a much more concise, informed narrative behind the game that's just been played. We're taking the same data that's been driven into the mobile app and the VR experience, but give that to our presenting talent, our on-screen talent that fully understand the game from a really high level. The next stage of the virtual studio development is really exciting. Two key areas. The first being to look at the studio design itself. We think that we can expand on the scale of it from our first proof of concept, but also we really want to flesh out some of those presenter tool sets a lot further.
So the two next big things for Weaver are hyper-personalization, tailoring the content even more, taking maybe people's own data and opening our experiences up to also be tools for creation of content, to really give people the tools to author content and to be successful creators themselves.
It's been an incredible journey so far. We've had a huge amount of response from industry, broadcast, press, and obviously the all-important stakeholders, that's the community from Dota 2 themselves.
So basically, what we've created is this B2B framework. Although we've got a lot of end-user consumer points there, as in an app and a virtual environment, etc., the whole project is all about actually providing that sort of digital narrative with statistics and analysis and using AI machine learning to empower existing platforms or new platforms and figure out how we're going to do that. And what we've actually done is looked at, well, what does that monetization look like? This is one of our largest events. It's IEM in Katowice, and we reach 411,000 kind of live streams. So that's not unique. That's people probably coming in maybe 3 times over 3 days and calculating that level. And if we're to look at the revenue projections, so obviously in 2018 we start the project. We've got a total reach of potential 180 million, all the way up to 2023 if we scale up this event, reaching 377, let's say. And we take a percentage of that, maybe realistic adoption, 40% maybe would actually consider using one of these experiences, whether that's through Twitch or Facebook or Oculus or any other platforms that exist at the time. And we've got this figure, 115 million in 2021 we can potentially reach. Now, if we were to take 15% of an adoption rate of that 40%, that would be about 17 million people potentially doing something with Weaver. And there's a lot of different end-user values we can bring to the table there. If we're to take an extremely conservative figure, let's say 25 pence, to actually monetize that fan base, which I think you could swap these numbers around a lot, but still, to reach about £4 million in additional incremental revenue for just one event would actually pay for the entire thing. So we really feel that we're unearthing and uncovering a new opportunity in ways in which we can engage, provide value, and ultimately monetize the content. And this is absolutely scalable. It can be the small, tiny stuff all the way to the very, very large stuff. Because if people really care about what they're watching, is what we're all doing in this room, then they're going to actually put their money on the table. They've done it time and time and time again. So that's the presentation. Thank you very much. Q&A, if I've got probably 2 minutes, I think. So there's a question over there.
Yes, let me go to you, just a second.
Hello, I understand this is a model you have done in the UK because you have funding from the government, but you have also events all over the world. I mean, is this something that you can replicate in every geography?
Absolutely. So it's a framework, it's a B2B framework, so it can work with any IP whatsoever. So it's basically an R&D project to discover how, and then what we like to see, and as we go along, there's a lot of IPs coming to us and saying, hey, we'd like to test out this framework with our own IP and see where we can also make incremental revenues. So absolutely, it's completely globally scalable, and it's global from the outset.
Okay. You go? Okay. He's going to you.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you for the ESL One Birmingham I went a couple of years ago.
Thank you as well.
In terms of, you mentioned like BBC and other kind of traditional things. What are you guys doing to, or are you doing anything to try and kind of push them to take a chance on you with some of your tournaments?
Yeah, I think it's a very political game. I mean, the director of BBC Sport, who is absolutely responsible for ultimately commissioning esports content as it stands in the grand scheme of things, sat on a stage and said explicitly, we're already doing esports. So that's the challenge. The reality is, I think we need to push harder, probably from a public affairs perspective. We speak to people in London and in Salford. We talk to the R&D teams, but really, it's the only people really trying to drive it internally are the people who are actually gamers themselves currently. So I think unless, say, Ofcom really do start saying, hey, you're still not doing anything here, and there was an article on Radio 4 this morning about this exact point, you know, I can't see any major changes coming from that direction, which would be a shame and more of a missed opportunity for the BBC, of course. So I have a 2-year-old and already he's not interested, so, you know, I think it's a good question, but and a very, very long answer potentially, but together we need to just keep singing the same message, I think.
I think
thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, James.